read a story this week of a marathon runner, some years ago now. She trained and trained and trained for this marathon. There was a cash prize at the end. She was running well and in first place, leading the field. At about the 10-kilometre mark, we were slowed down for one of the drink stations, and there was a disabled athlete who was obviously set off before her, whose limbs had double amputee of limbs, and so was struggling to drink the water, to get the water, and so she slowed down even more and helped him to have a drink. And then she slowed to his pace and ran the rest of the marathon at his pace, at each drink station helping him to get a drink, to drink. It meant she forfeited her first position, she came second, but forfeited the cash prize. She did it willingly to help another person finish the race and finish it well. When I heard that or read that story, I thought, wow, God's in that, because that's an act of love, of kindness. It's an act of grace. And wherever there's love and goodness and life, God is present in some mysterious way, because God is love. It reminded me too of, there's a scene in the Bruce Almighty movie where Bruce complains bitterly about God. God's not doing God's job, and Bruce could do it better, and blah blah blah. So God gives Bruce some powers. you can be God for a bit. So Bruce uses these powers to right a few wrongs in his own life, to impress his girlfriend, and to try and get the promotion that he's always wanted. He gets a whole lot of prayer requests as God, and he doesn't know how to answer them all. There's just so many. So he just says yes to the lot. And chaos rages around him. And anyway, God calls him in and they get together, and he says, I just wanted to make people happy and do a few miracles. And I can't remember the exact words, but God says, played by Morgan Freeman, says to Bruce, those aren't miracles. They're party tricks. Something like that. A miracle is when a single mum is holding down 2 jobs to make ends meet, and she still gets her kids to football practice on time. She cares and loves them. And I thought of that story of the athlete who gave of herself for this fellow athlete. The words in Bruce Almighty, of the presence of God and where I see and experience God in the world and life around me. Nico and I went for our morning walk this morning, went down along Toongabbie Creek, ultimately to the dog park, and along the track there's beautiful gum trees, there's rock formations, there's shrubs and there's new plantings, and the bird life, parrots and corellas and galahs and cockatoos and magpies and kookaburra, and all the bird song that goes along with them. In early in early spring, there's the red-bellied blacksnakes out sunning themselves, which is beautiful to watch, as long as they're a bit off the track. In summer, there'll be the water dragons, and we'll get the cicadas singing. In the creek, there's eels and fish. It's just a beautiful place. And as we walked with the sun on our back and a bit of a breeze, the blue sky, it was just beautiful with clouds, just a few white clouds floating through. And I thought, God is in this place. Presence in the wonder and the beauty of the world. When I gather with people around a table and share a meal, and there's stories of laughter and fun, and the sad, serious ones, where we share life together and food, simple and around the table. When I go to a movie or see one on TV and it's one of those inspiring stories that just lifts you. Or listen to some music. For me it's usually jazz, and it can be the fast bebop kind of style of Charlie Parker. Or maybe it's more the melodic blues or ballads. It's just beautiful. But I also like classical, you know, some of those beautiful tunes, melodies with the orchestra playing. Or maybe it's just a bit of good old rock and roll or hard rock that drives me and picks me up and takes me on a journey. Or someone who shares a good story, a moving story that touches me. Or maybe it's a piece of art or poetry that makes me wonder. I love taking photographs and connecting with the world, with flowers and trees and plants and sky and landforms and rivers and creeks and oceans and whatever else is there, deserts, animals. I connect with these things and feel a sense of the presence of the divine, of the sacred, of the holy, close. I thought of these things this week. I think of them most weeks, but particularly because this Sunday in churches is the Reign of Christ Sunday. A Sunday when we reflect and think about the reign of God, the reign of Christ in the world around us, and where we see and experience this presence of God, this presence of Christ. In the flowers and plants and leaves and the greens and the blues and the reds and the purples and the pinks and the yellows and the whites and browns and all the colours, all the wonder, the sizes, the textures, the beauty. It's where we experience love and hope and peace and justice. For those people who have a prophetic and real sense of justice, who speak out for Indigenous people and Indigenous rights across the world. Those who speak out for the earth. We've just had the Glasgow conference, COP26, and the outcomes have been disappointing, really. Our earth is struggling and the human race is up against it. But we don't seem to have the will to do what's needed. And yet there are voices, young voices in particular, who call out and cry out and work for justice for the earth and for the well-being of creatures and for all who inhabit this earth. Those who work with and for refugees and asylum seekers and the displaced and homeless persons throughout the world, both local ones in city streets, but also those displaced by wars and famines and oppression and other things. Those who stand up to oppressive regimes, who have courage to fight against that which is wrong. So much of this, I hear the voice of God and see God. And I see God in the suffering and the struggling of people in their lives. I hear the voice of God in the cries of the poor and the marginalised, in the mentally ill, in those who are lonely, those who cry for injustice. I don't always act like I should, but I hear them. In the story, one of the stories set down for this week, it's from John's story of Jesus, and it's where Jesus is taken before Pontius Pilate. He's been arrested by the religious people, and he's taken before Pilate, who represents the emperor, the Roman emperor, the power of Rome. And you can tell in the story that Pilate's, who is this bedraggled person, tired and worn out? Who is he? What sort of threat is he? Anyway, he comes back in, he brings Jesus in, he says, right, they say you're a king. Is that true? And Jesus says, well, you say so. Who told you this? The Jews, or is it your own idea? Do I look like a Jew? So you're a king. And Jesus says, my kingdom, my reign is not of this world. If it was, then my followers would come with spears and swords and fight to free me and release me. I've come to bear witness to the truth. Pilate says, what is the truth? In this story, Jesus talks about my kingdom, my reign is not of this world. He doesn't mean it's of heaven when you die out there somewhere. It's not like the kingdoms and reigns of this world. I'm not like Caesar. I'm not like King Herod. I'm not like the religious leaders. My reign is typified by other things. It's about relationship. It's about love and connecting with people. It's about the common good and well-being. It's about lifting up the poor and the outcasts and the marginalised and holding them in equality with everyone else. It's about sharing wealth and resources so that everyone has enough and no one has too much. My reign is different from those who seek to gain more resources, more wealth, more power, more control, more domination. I don't use violence to get my way. I live out of love and grace and relationship and inclusion and justice. That's what my reign is about. And it's the opposite to everything you stand for. And you can do what you like to me, but you can't destroy me, because God is with me. And the truth he speaks about is this truth. And Pilate says, what is truth? And is Pilate looking for the answers? Or is he cynical or what? We don't know. But we live in a world which is sometimes described as post-truth, where politicians say what they like, what they think, what they think will make people happy. Not just politicians, mind you. Where there's fake news and distortion of truth and what is right. Jesus says, I come to bear witness to the truth. He doesn't say anything more because the bearing witness to the truth is in his being. It's in how he lives. It's in how he embraces people. The marginalised, the lowly, he picks up. Those who are outcast and shunned, he embraces into the community of God's love and grace. To those who are suffering, he brings hope. The sick, he brings healing and life and restoration. It's about this way of love. Where do I see God in the world? Wherever love is expressed in deep and sacrificial ways, wherever people give themselves to another, wherever people lift up the lowly or serve the common good, I see the presence of Christ. In the marginalised and the poor, in the face of the hungry and the struggling, is the face of the Christ. And when we do good, when we love that person, we are loving God. This week we speak of the reign of Christ. It's all around us. In the sun that's setting now, in the trees, the gum trees, in the sky that's glowing, in the flowers that are blooming, in the birds that are singing and flying and finding a bed for the night, in the dog that's chewing his bone, in the beauty and the wonder of the world, in friends and family, in stories and song, in art and poetry, in being together, in celebrating life and hope and joy. In all these things, God is present. This is the reign of Christ, the reign of God that's everywhere around us, in the midst of sacred and holy living. When you look and see and celebrate God's reign,